right, everybody. Welcome in. Welcome in to another edition of Let's Talk Live here on the LTL Media Channel. Crazy day here in the case of Bryan Kohberger and the four University of Idaho students that were murdered back in November of 2022. We have a lot to get into today. I'm going to give you my thoughts and opinions as we're waiting for the court trial feed to come up. I do see the ticker running on court TV. So courtroom cameras are there. They're ready. And we're going to hear that plea deal play out today in an Idaho court in Boise, Idaho, in front of Judge Hippler and the families. And I've been watching the Twitter feed of Brian Enton. He is on scene reporting out there. And let me just read some of his tweets right now. So 39 minutes ago, Brian Enton reported that Ethan Chapin's family has arrived to the courthouse, and they are such a wonderful family. 12 minutes later, Gonsalves' family has arrived. Steve walked the family to the front of the courthouse. They all went inside, but Steve is now leaving. He said yesterday he couldn't be in there. 11 minutes ago, Steve Gonsalves outside of court says prosecutors made a deal with the devil. Made a deal with the devil. And this is kind of the sad reality of all of this. Bryan Kohberger, after putting in this plea deal, now we know that he was set to be executed if found guilty via the firing squad. Now they come to this arraignment. Bill Thompson talks to the defense team. They make kind of this backhanded arrangement for this plea deal. They take the death penalty off the table. They take appeals off the table. So essentially, Bryan Kohberger will live out the rest of his life in an Idaho jail or wherever he is transferred off to. Is that real justice for this family? And that's the question that I have to ask all of you here in the chat. Is this real justice for these families? Did they get their day in court to see this play out? I feel the world has been robbed of why. Why did this all happen? Now, I believe that somewhere down the road, there will be information that leaks. There will be potential witnesses that are ready to talk and tell us their stories of what they know. But will we ever get the full story? And I know all of you in the chat are asking, will he have to give the details? I was watching some lawyers, some Idaho lawyers on Banfield last night or the night before and talking about, what will he have to confess to? And I'm going to tell you, my friends, this may be a very watered down version of what you're looking for, of what you want to know. The truth is, we don't know how hard Judge Hippler will be in this confession. I hope he puts his foot down. I hope we hear all of the details today of who, what, where, and why. And that is solely the big question of this. Why did this happen? Why did this happen? So it's good morning again. It's morning some places out here in the East Coast. It is 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in the afternoon. And again, we're waiting for the plea hearing of Bryan Kohberger to start. And I want to just start off here with an article from CBS News that was dropped this morning. Bryan Kohberger man charged in 4 murders of University of Idaho students expected to plead guilty today. I'm going to read a little bit from this. Kohberger, the former criminal justice doctrine student charged in the murders of the 4 University of Idaho students in 2022, is expected to officially plead guilty Wednesday in the deal with prosecutors that spares him from the death penalty. The hearing is expected to begin at 11 a.m. That's 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we are out here on the East Coast. People are hoping to be inside the courtroom that have been lined up since 2:45 a.m. this morning. Obviously, they're going to read off and talk about the crime. We're going to skip down a little bit. The plea deal was first revealed in a letter sent to the victims' families by Latah County Prosecutor's Office. Mogan's father, Ben Mogan, shared portions of the letter with CBS Morning, in which the prosecutor's office said that the attorneys for Kohberger, 30 years old, requested the deal and Kohberger accepted it. Is that really the true way that these families should have been notified? Do you think there should have been a phone call, a conversation about this? And we know that the Latah County, we know that Bill Thompson And the state of Idaho and the prosecuting office has not been open and honest through this investigation under that extreme gag order and seal. I just feel like these families are being robbed. A jury, just like Steve Gonsalves said in his interview on News Nation, a jury of his peers, the community should have decided this. And now I know there's a split between the families. I'm going to read a statement here in a minute from the Gonsalves family that was posted about 2 hours ago before they headed off to court. Let me get back to this. The deal requires Kohberger to plead guilty to all counts against him and said that they would be sentenced to 4 consecutive back-to-back life sentences on 4 murder counts and would waive his rights to appeal. The plea deal would spare him the death penalty, which prosecutors had sought. Kohberger will also plead guilty to the burglary count and be sentenced to 10 years according to the letter. In Idaho, the judge has the authority to reject the plea deal, but it's considered rare. The letter says that if Kohberger enters a guilty plea as expected, prosecutors expect him to be sentenced in late July. If he does not enter an expected guilty plea, prosecutors will proceed to trial. Kohberger's trial is expected to begin in August, following the several days. Kohberger's defense team had motioned to remove the death penalty as possible sentence if he was convicted, denied in November of 2024. The case was meant to be tried in Latah County, but then moved to Boise out of concerns that the media coverage and statements from local officials would make it impossible for Kohberger to receive a fair trial. Most recently, Idaho County Judge Steve Hippler denied a motion by Kohberger's lawyers who were seeking to argue that 4 alternate perpetrators could have committed the slayings. The judge called the argument rank speculation and said nothing linked to the parties to the murders. I think this was the last-ditch effort from Ann Taylor and her team. Let's throw this against the wall, see if the shit sticks. If it doesn't, we're pretty much doomed. And we've seen this through over the process of 3 years, multiple delays, reciting law from 1775. We had all the monkey business with the DNA evidence. We had the autism spectrum behavior put out there. So it was delay. And I said this from the beginning when I first started covering this case, and these delays started to happen. If you are ready and you are certain that your client is not guilty of these charges, then why not go forward with the trial? Delay. To me, they had no way they were going to be able to defend him. And I still think, given the evidence that we've heard in this case, I still think there's more. And there are deep ties that tie this guy, obviously, to these crimes. And there was no way that Ann Taylor and her team were going to get up and be able to defend this. I wanted to see this play out in court. I wanted to know why. And I know you all wanted to know why as well, too. I look at certain things, Scott Green, the former president of the University of Idaho. I was just reading this article from the interview room from Chris McDonough. Give us McDonough. After the student murders, the college received $1 million in emergency taxpayer money. They funneled the bulk of the funds to consultants. Now the college refuses to disclose the consultants' findings. Why? Because you know why? Everybody got paid. Everybody got paid. In that article, it says that university officials received between a 4 and a 5% raise. So everybody got paid. They wanted to make money off this. We found out about the house being gifted to the University of Idaho and then torn down. I said that was a mistake. The house should have stayed, because when you take down a structure, you cannot replicate that structure. You cannot replicate the amplification in the acoustics inside that house. And that could have been a key piece of evidence for that jury to see. I rail on about this. I don't care about digital scanning. I don't care about video clips. You would never be able to replicate that house in the acoustical environment of that house. The sounds. Could have things been heard inside that house? I thought that was a huge mistake. And it was a PR move by the University of Idaho because they were in a panic mode that students were not going to come back. So let's tear down the house. Let's build a memorial. And let's get paid. And that's what happened. Let me see if Bryan Enton is retweeting anything here. He is outside the courthouse. Last tweet again, 20 minutes ago. Steve Gonzalez outside the court says the prosecutors made a deal with the devil. Let me get to some of the chats here. Jersey Jen, thank you so much. She's $2, says, thank you for doing this today, LTL Media. Absolutely. I mean, we've come back pretty much full circle. Let me get my cheat drink here. We've come back pretty much full circle. You know, I launched my true crime venture from the Idaho 4 case. It was a curiosity of mine. You know, I started my channel 4.5 years ago, but I've always had a very strong interest in crimes, solving, true crime, the first 48 cops, any, show on serial killers that I could get my hands on. I read books, and I said, maybe this is what I need to talk about, because things just didn't add up. But then doing the deep dive into it with the evidence that was out there, things started to add up for me. And in that direction, it pointed to one person only that I could see, and that was Bryan Kohberger. Tsunami says, the real question, who is Papa Roger? Exactly. We may never find out. And thank you so much, Ryan, for being a channel member, a moderator. You've been a long time supporter of mine here following my cases. So it's disappointing. It's disappointing. I wanted this to play out all in court. I wanted the world to see. I wanted the Gonzalez family and all those the other families, the Chapins, to see what played out in front of us all. Bryan Enton had a interview with Catherine Ramslin last night. She was a former teacher of Bryan Kohberger. And let's see what she had to say as we wait for the plea hearing to start. Again, the marquee is spinning live on the Court TV feed, and we'll go to that when that hearing resumes. Here we go.
I want to bring now, though, and we're joined exclusively by her, renowned forensic psychologist, Dr. Catherine Ramslin. As you may know, she was Bryan Kohberger's professor and advisor at DeSales University in Pennsylvania. She has not spoken publicly about Bryan Kohberger until now. She's been on this show talking about other cases, but she's been very, very careful not to talk about Kohberger because of the trial, because she was going to be a witness at the trial, and she now feels comfortable to open up to us. And we've got so many questions, Dr. Ramslin, that I've got so many questions I've wanted to ask you for so long. I want to start with
thank you, S.J. Howard. Appreciate you.
Bryan Kohberger. What classes of yours was he in?
Okay, I want to be just clear that I'm still within the FERPA limitations that protect students and student information. So I will talk within that. I met him in the fall of 2018 when he came to DeSales University. He had an associate's degree, and he was going to get into our 4-year program as a psychology major. He selected the forensic track, which made him an advisee for me because I managed the forensic track. And he was also in my class that semester.
And Dr. Ramslin talks about FERPA. I should have mentioned that. There's a law, it's a federal law, I believe, that she is not allowed to talk about certain aspects of a student, their grades, certain parts of their academic life. It's almost like a HIPAA. So she's going to tell us what she can, but unless Bryan Kohberger signs off, she's legally not allowed to talk about certain elements of his academic career. So just keep that in mind if there's some things that Dr. Ramslin can't answer. What was your perception of him?
He seemed like eager to be in the classroom. He was polite. He was respectful, intense, and
Thank you,
curious.
Rhonda.
And there was no reason for me to think that he was anything other than someone who was really interested in this potential career.
Was there anything looking back now that was strange about him or that you noticed?
All right, real quick, I just tweeted at Brian Enton. I asked, is Kohberger's family there? I got a response from an account called True Crime Central, and they said yes. So Kohberger's family is there. Looks like all families are there. Steve Gonzalez said he will not be going into the courthouse today. I'm curious. I mean, will we hear from any of the families after this? Will there be a press briefing after this plea? How long will this plea take? What are the details that we're going to hear during this plea? That's all. That's the curiosity here. Those are all the questions that we're trying to answer. All right, let's keep playing on here. Brian Enton and Catherine
When I look
Ramsland,
back, there really
former professor of Bryan Kohberger.
isn't anything that stood out to me. I think when you're a teacher, your instinct is to accept students at face value. You don't, start with suspicions or, and there really weren't any red flags. He was always really quite respectful and grateful. He would thank me for things. He was attentive. He would do the work. I didn't have any concerns.
What I think it was 4 classes that you taught him in. What were those classes?
There were 3 undergraduate courses in the forensic track that I taught, and he was.
Nero, thank you for becoming a new YouTube member. I appreciate that. Thank you for supporting the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure to subscribe. It's free. Turn on your bell notification. Give the stream a like. Again, we're going to follow through and play out the live plea deal of Bryan Kohberger today and see if we get any reactions from the families. Will they speak? I'm sure Steve Gonzalez has a lot to say after this. All right, here we go.
In all of them. Well, one was introduction to forensic psychology. Another was my death investigation class, which was called psychological sleuthing. And the third one was called Dangerous Minds, the psychology of antisocial behavior. And then he got into the graduate program in criminal justice for a master's degree. And he took a course with me called behavioral criminology.
Is there anything, Dr. Ramsland, when you look back and you think about the curriculum of those classes, and not getting into his specific experience, but when you think about what you taught in those classes that you think, oh my gosh, he may have used that in what he's now accused of doing here in Idaho?
Yeah, S.J. Howard, you might have lapsed. You might have lapsed. Your membership might have lapsed. If you want to sign back up, you can. To support the channel, just click that join button down below. My membership started at $1.99. All right, here we go.
The antisocial behavior course involves serial killers and mass murderers, and we do a lot of case analysis. I use two books that I wrote. One was written with the BTK killer, whom you just mentioned, and his decision process and the crimes and how he thought about them and felt about them and what was it like for him, to be caught. So that's a very intense book. And also I have one called The Mind of a Murderer, which was about various behavioral experts over the past century who interviewed killers, mass murderers, and serial killers to get as close as possible, spending a lot of time with them to get as close as possible to their process of becoming a criminal. And so he would have been exposed to that. I think now looking back, I would look at maybe some of the things that interested him as being, something that gives me pause. But we always have to think about, we all know, everyone in this field, forensic psychology and criminology, know that we could have students who might become offenders. But we also know that the vast majority of our students will not, and will instead go into a field like law enforcement, FBI, Secret Service, that make the world better, that protect us. So we know that there's always a risk that we're attracting somebody who wants to do something terrible. Hoping we won't ever have that, but in my case, I did.
Can you say, Dr. Ramsland, what it was looking back now that sort of raises your eyebrows specifically in terms of things in the class?
I think just the idea of wanting to study offenders and what their thought process was, how they felt about their crimes, wanting to study that, and then finding out that this is a person who then is now saying he's guilty of doing these things. I have to look at the framework of what I taught and wonder, did I inspire him in some way? Did I?
Chill.
But I can't second guess.
Chill. What? Let's go back and hear that.
And then finding out that this is a person who then is now saying he's guilty of doing these things. I have to look at the framework of what I taught and wonder, did I inspire him in some way? Did I? But I can't second guess that, because I may have inspired somebody else to become an FBI agent. And that's, unfortunately, in this field, that's what we live with.
Yeah, I know,
I mean,
Martha,
you've been
right?
studying serial killers most of your life, but when you talk about the fact that what you taught may have inspired this, that's got to be hard for you to process, I would imagine.
It's terrible, very hard. And it's not just what happened to the victims. I really thought Bryan Kohberger was a promising student who really could have made a mark.
And this is usually what happens with all these people. And I don't want to call Kohberger a serial killer. I think this is more of a mass killing versus a serial killing. Serial killing has, patterns and traits and will continue for years. You look at Dahmer, you look at Bundy, they all had charisma. They all had their way with the public. Some of them had certain ways with women, with men, whatever it may be. True, absolute sociopaths. And that's how they hide among regular people. They adapt to our behavior, even though they're very sick inside their heads. All of the visions and thoughts that go on inside their head and their compulsions to go out and reach out and do these harmful things to people, but they are able to blend into society. That's why it's such a shock when we hear and see things like this. What do they always say? The serial killer, he's the one that's living right next door to you. You look at what was the thing in Cleveland, Amanda Berry, for years, that guy, and I forget his name, but he entrapped her in his house for like 15 or 20 years. And, there was Charles Ramsey, the guy that got out and spoke, that lived in that neighborhood. He said, I lived around here for a year. The guy used to come out. He'd work in his yard. He'd have barbecue. He'd have me over. I'd be in his backyard hanging out with him. And then the horrors that are going on inside that house. And then finally, Amanda Berry got loose and ended up calling authorities, and that's how we find out. But that's how these things usually play out. It's the devil among you, and that's what they do, is they hide in society, and they can blend in society. So it's pretty crazy. Let's play a little bit more of this, and again, we're just waiting for the plea feed to come up. It says court is going to resume shortly. I'm looking at the courtroom feed, and I'll keep an eye on this, and then when it does pop up, we'll go live to that plea hearing of Bryan Kohberger, set to happen today at 1 p.m. So in about 5 minutes, and we'll just sit here and play a little bit more of this, and I'm keeping an eye on the court feed. Yes. I haven't seen any other tweeting from Brian Entin as of yet.
Career in a very positive way. I thought that, so disappointed, angry, and very shocked that this is who he turned out to be. and horrified for the victims and their families, just horrified. I mean, I worked with Dennis Rader closely for 5 years. I met the victims' families. I saw the devastation that these kinds of acts can have, and I have to always keep that in mind when I'm teaching these subjects.
What did you think when you first heard that Bryan Kohberger, your former student, was arrested for this?
I was completely floored. I didn't believe it. And his demeanor that we saw on media was that he was confident that he was going to be able to prove his innocence. So I wanted to wait and see. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. But as months go by and he kept saying that he had an alibi, and I wondered, well, why are you sitting in jail? Give us your alibi, get
Yeah,
out.
exactly, Rhonda.
And that wasn't happening. And then it was really when he said his alibi, and it was clearly not an alibi.
Driving
We would have
around.
known that, certainly from all the classes that he had through undergraduate and graduate work. He would have understood that wasn't.
Remember, he was just driving around. Driving around everywhere. That's all he was doing. He was driving.
Really an alibi.
Stargazing.
I think that was when I was really, floored that this is my student who has done these things.
You mentioned, you studied BTK, the serial killer. You met with him many times in prison. This is what you do in a hope to prevent these things from further happening and understand the mind of a serial killer. Would you want to study Bryan Kohberger? Have you put any thought into that? Is that something that you think could be possible?
I've been thinking about that for 2.5 years. I would. This is my work. If he wanted to do that, I would. And within the framework of this is what we do to try to look at developmental trajectories, the triggers, so that we can see the red flags faster. We can prevent people like this from wreaking the havoc that they do. So if he wanted to do that, I know that he's got the intellectual capacity to do it, to be self-reflective, to help think through how his life came to this. And so I would definitely do it if he were willing. And it would be hard. But I think because I have so much material from him, I have questions for him that I think nobody else but me could ask.
And just my last question, Dr.
Yeah.
Ramsland, you are the person that I think of who, if anyone could see through someone and see.
I like this from Karma says, maybe stop teaching courses that teach people how to be psychos. Yeah,
that they have a secret side. I would think it would be you, because this has been your life's work, and trying to figure that out. And in a sense, it almost feels like Bryan Kohberger even had you fooled.
Well, I study the ones who are really good at it, because I want to truly try to understand what can we see in the constellation of behaviors that will tip us off earlier. Because people who are really good at passing as normal and keeping their dark side hidden can fool people, can fool all the experts for a long period of time. I think anybody in my field will tell you they can be duped by a really skillful, predatory type of person. So, I'm not going to say I'm the person who can spot this. I can see things like if you have a rigid personality and you're threatening, those are red flags that are very clear.
Again, if you're just popping in, we're waiting for the plea hearing of Bryan Kohberger today. It's set to start in about a minute. I do have the court feed up on my screen. I've been watching it closely. Still no action. We'll play out another 2 minutes here, and then we'll get to that live feed. So here we go.
Or you have
Thank
a
you,
mental instability and you're drawing, violent images. These are things we can see and we can anticipate. But if somebody's presenting themselves as a completely normal human being, engaged in life the way that according to our expectations, it's really hard to see through that. And as a teacher, I am not initially suspicious that students are there for the wrong
BTK.
reasons. And so I think some of us have what I would call a cognitive disadvantage, because we are giving the benefit of the doubt to students. And I think that's certainly what happened. That's why I would want to work with him and study him, because I want to understand how he was able to completely fool me.
Well, it'll be interesting to see as this moves along, if that indeed ends up happening. Dr. Ramsland, appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing this insight into your former student. Thank you so much.
All right, here we go. Whoa, super loud. Let me pull up the court hearing screen here. So right now, that's what it looks like. Again, we're waiting. No audio yet. And, we'll just kind of wait here. Let me see if any updates from Brian Enton. I'm looking on his X account. News Nation's going to cover it. Nothing yet from Brian Enton. Excuse me. Last tweet was 41 minutes ago. Says Steve Gonzalez outside court says the prosecutors made a deal with the devil. While we wait for that, let me read the full statement via the Gonzalez family Facebook page today. Let me get to that. And I'm going to read that full statement about 2 hours before they headed to court. And I'll read this for you all. All right, here we go. While we wait for court to resume, the Gonzalez family makes a statement via their Facebook page. It says, right here, right now, we dug our heels into the earth and carve up a line deep in the dirt. This isn't justice. No judge proceeded, no jury weigh in the truth. Thompson robbed us of our day in court. No negotiations, no jury of our peers, not even the pretense of cooperation and fairness. Cowardly men, gutless men, they're all scattered like roaches when the battle closes in. And Thompson, he's retiring on this deal, his shadow slithering towards the exit, leaving only the stench of his betrayal. No spine, no shred of honor. He didn't have the basic decency, the plan, human courage to face the families, to meet our eyes and ask, how do we make an offer that works? Instead, Thompson cut a deal with the devil. His negotiation didn't require anything other than a simple guilty plea, allowing him to leeway to blame the same people you are paid to protect. You betrayed us, Thompson. Your deal falls to shield the innocent. Your deal fails to shield the innocent. You could have stood tall and made damn sure the blame stayed where it belongs, not on us, not on the broken survivors still carrying the weight of your repeated failures. This is our courtroom now. This moment, this stand, our voices rise to every American who listens. We would have provided protection for the roommates, the best friends, the fallen vet, God rest his soul, and every soul that affected in our shattered community. We would have carved the items like sacred commandments etched deep into unyielding granite, a testament to those we've lost in the justice they've owned. First, truth spilled. Bryan Kohberger, every sickening detail, only the killer could know. The kind and twist your guts just to hear, but turns even a simpleton pro-burger against you. Second, you bear the guilt, all of it alone. You don't get to smear the survivors, the ones still walking the nightmares born of your reckless choices. Third, no cashing in on our grief. No books, no private interviews with your ex-professor. No one is allowed to study you because you're not special. You don't get to spit on our kids' graves by making this all about you. Only Hitler can step in to mend the wreckage Thompson left in Leta's so-called justice system. This is what murder victim family negotiation looks like. It's ugly, it's raw, it's wild, it's anything but easy. You let Mr. Thompson didn't even bother to negotiate with us. So this is all we have left. There's no more time for us to wait for you to make a stand. So we stand in your place. Kaylee J. Gonzalez, we love you, baby. You deserve better than this justice system. Your soul is not Thompson bargaining chip. We do not accept his plea deal signed in your name. We're screaming for you as loud as we can. Haley Jade is better than this. This is our last shot. Judge Hippler, you are only hope that our child's murderer isn't granting control over his destiny and our children's names. You take control of this deal and make it right because now you own it. Wow. Very powerful statement. I can't imagine I can imagine feeling that pain, but I don't know the loss that they have gone through. This is not my child, but I can only think, and I commend the Gonzalez family for the last 3 years of everything that they have done to stand up for their daughter and Maddie, her friend, and the other 2 victims, Ethan and Xana. They got a lot of shit through all of this. People were calling them rock stars, people saying that they just wanted to be in front of the camera. No, I'm sorry. If this is my family member, my daughter, my son, my mother, my father, whatever it may be, I would have acted exactly the same way that Stephen Christie acted. I would have been in front of a camera every single day talking about this. I have problems. My heart breaks. It truly does. I mean, is this real justice? Hang on one second. Hang on a second. Oh. Okay. Sorry. So again, we're just waiting here. Court feed is up, waiting for court to resume. I appreciate everybody coming in and watching this plea deal with me here today. Is every time I go live, I have multiple messages. I don't get it. Not all day. I don't get hardly anything all day. My phone is quiet. The minute I go live, there's like 40 million people need to get in touch with me about issues that are not even happening on the show. So anyway, again, we're just waiting here for the court feed. Thank you so much for being here. Let's look at the chat. Teeper Legal checking in. This is not justice, not personally or professionally, in my opinion. Adam, great guy. I'd like to hear your opinion on all of this. Denise, I understand his anger. However, none of them have to endure a trial. This is a blessing. She believes this is a blessing. They don't have to learn gruesome facts. They should have to hear. It's a terrible man, and he will rot in prison. I think they were ready. I mean, they made in a statement that they were ready. They knew the details that would be out there. They knew the horrific photos that were going to be put out there, the evidence that was going to be put out there. And they were ready. And I understand. I mean, you have to think your daughter and 3 of her friends were taken in one of the most violent ways possible. It's something that I can never fathom. But the only way for this to play out and the only way to essentially learn from this was to let this play out in a court and let the jury decide. Now, I understand that it just takes one juror, and it takes just a little bit of reasonable doubt to plant that seed in that juror's head, and they cement their feet in the ground and they say, he did not do this. And then here we are, mistrial. And if Ann Taylor could have crafted that narrative We could have been mistrial after mistrial after mistrial after mistrial. But I truly believe because of this plea deal, there was so much overwhelming evidence that we haven't heard about and we may never hear about that would have nailed this guy down. I felt this from the start. From the start, years ago when I first started following this, I said they got the goods on this guy. There's too much overwhelming evidence. Excuse me. You know, but I say, look, take the plea, unseal the records, let the public know. If you want to give it back, if you want to give it back to that community, we need to know the full story of what happened. And I'm really curious as to why. And we may not get that today. It may be a very watered down version, when Bryan Kohberger stands up and takes this plea. Just going to go to the chat here. Yeah, I mean, Karma making a good point. Now, their tax dollars, meaning those families, their tax dollars pay for Bryan Kohberger to be in prison, fed and housed. We'll be able to interact with the world. X checking in saying, hey, BLT, happy to be here with you on such a miserable day for the family. I appreciate that. If it's your first time over here on the channel, please make sure to subscribe and smash that like button. Yes, we are live. We are live on the home base here on YouTube. If you're not connected with me on YouTube, you can look me up, LTL Media, and subscribe. It's free. Ashley saying, I think I would want to know every detail. The only way I would be okay with this is if he had to admit the details and answer any questions I have. I agree, but unfortunately, life doesn't play out. The justice system, unfortunately, doesn't play out that way. Looks like we're getting a little bit of action here on the Court TV feed. I see their mouse moving. Let me go back to Brian Enton, see if there's been any updates. Okay, 9 minutes ago, Brian Enton reports, and he is out there on scene, says in line outside the courtroom, waiting to go in. They have us up against the wall to make room for the victims' families as they walk by to enter. Everyone is silent. I'm so sad for them. Let's see. Patty checking in saying, Brian, do you think we'll get any more evidence, like some of the evidence as in how he was able to do this so quickly and how he was able to get away with no blood in his car and why and what prompted this? Patty, I don't know, but I think, I think in cases, as you know, as we hear, things tend to leak. Witnesses talk. You might get some officers that talk out behind the scenes and leak sources. I think there's been a lot of information that's been leaked out there that just hasn't been spoken about. You may hear his family. You may hear Bryan Kohberger's family come out and say some things. You might hear the Gonzalez family speak up about things that they have heard. I can't remember, but I could have remembered reading a report that did the Gonzalez family have a PI that was doing investigative work? I know Steve was doing a lot of things, knowing his background in IT. And I think that one of his daughters were doing some really deep super sleuthing as well. We read reports of that, but I'm not sure if they had an actual PI. And maybe one of you can confirm that. But, the thing about a K-bar knife, and I've held one in my hands before. I actually did a live stream about it and showed what a K-bar knife actually looks like. I mean, it's a Marine's killing machine. It's the last resort if a Marine loses its weapon. It's very, very sharp. It's a powerful handheld killing machine. So it wouldn't take much with a stab from a K-bar knife. Now, given the time, I've done an experiment like that on my channel before. I wanted to see what it felt like to be 9 to 12 minutes because that was the given time of these crimes. So what I actually did is I went out to a car wash and I timed a car wash, actually just sitting in the car wash, an automated car wash, going through it and seeing what 9 to 12 minutes felt like. I think we end up landing around 8.5, and it felt like a long time. Now, given if Kohberger was studying this house and he was looking inside and mapped out his attack, which I think he had all of this planned out, to get up and down inside that house and lay this out in the best laid plan, it is possible. It's definitely possible. Knowing that, he was running, he was training, he was losing weight, taking in all those variables to get himself ready for this attack. I think he did all of that. Yeah, Enton is now in the courtroom. Brian Enton, 53 seconds ago, says, I'm in the courtroom. Bryan Kohberger in here now, about to start. Okay, we'll wait for the feed. I'm just going to step away for 2 seconds. I'll be right back.
It will come to order. The Honorable Stephen Hitler, presiding judge.
All right, here we go. Let me boost the sound. All right, we're a little bit behind, but speed up here.
It's also highly inappropriate. A court is not supposed to, and this court will never take into account public sentiment in making an opinion regarding its judicial decisions in cases. Court should, and I always will, make decisions based on where the facts and the law lead me, period. I have not read any of the numerous messages nor listened to any of the numerous voicemails that have been sent to me and my staff. Those have all been forwarded to security and, where appropriate, to law enforcement. I ask that you not continue to mount such campaigns or to send me information like this, because again, it is not appropriate and frankly not something I would take into account when deciding a matter in a case like this. I also want people to understand some very basic concepts about the ideas of separation of powers, what the court's duties are, and what the duties and the rights of the executive, or in this case, the prosecuting attorney, is. The executive, the elected prosecutor, is the sole authority in deciding what charges to pursue, including whether, as well as what penalties to ask for, and what penalties to pursue, including the death penalty. This court cannot require the prosecutor to seek the death penalty, nor would it be appropriate for this court to attempt to do that. This court, in considering a plea agreement, if it were to reject this plea agreement, cannot force the state to seek the death penalty. My role and power in considering a plea agreement is extremely limited. My role is to ensure that the defendant's plea is given freely, voluntarily, and intelligently. If those things are met, I can only reject a plea, such as the one in this case, where I'm not being asked to agree to the sentence in advance. I can only reject it, for example, if the defendant does not meet or admit to all of the elements of the crime. That is, I can ensure what is called a factual basis to the plea. Finally, I want to offer my apologies to all the families, including the victims' families, the families of the defendant, for the short notice for today's hearing, and I'm sure what must have been the hurried efforts to get here. I, like most everyone else, learned of this plea agreement Monday afternoon and had no inkling of it beforehand. Prior to that time, I was under the belief that this case was proceeding to trial, as had been indicated, and my staff and I were busy continuing to work on preparations to have potentially 10,000 citizens of Ada County come to jury duty starting in mid-July, with the questionnaire process in mid-July. It was, once I learned of the defendant's decision to change his plea in this case, it was important that I take the plea as soon as possible because of the extraordinary administrative efforts that were otherwise attendant to the process of this, getting this trial potentially underway on time, and including the significant process of bringing, again, potentially up to 10,000 jurors to come in and fill out juror questionnaires prior to the beginning of the voir dire process. And so it was important that we, if we're going to go down this road, do so expeditiously so that we can avoid those costs and expenses associated with that. Otherwise, if it was not going to result in a plea, or if for some reason the plea were to fall through today, that we could continue diligently towards trial at the time specified. And so that obviously required that we act quickly. And so some folks may have not had the amount of time that we would otherwise allow for them to travel here. And so again, I apologize for that.
So real quick, Kohberger is on top right. You can see Ann Taylor with the blue suit on. He's got a laptop in front of him. That's where Kohberger is. To the left, that's the prosecuting team. All right, I don't want to stop this too much because this is live. Let's go back to the coverage.
I want to make people aware that during the hearing, if you are to leave the courtroom for any reason, you will not be readmitted during the hearing. Also, when we finish the hearing this morning, I ask that the public and media wait in their seats until the victims' families and the defendants' families and others are escorted out of the courtroom before you start to leave. Finally, I want to acknowledge the trial court administrator and her staff, the Ada County Sheriff, and the Ada County 4th District Marshal Service for the huge lift that they've accomplished in preparing for and orchestrating this hearing today, as well as to all the security attendant today that you see, and some of whom you many of whom you don't see, with less than 48 hours notice. And so I appreciate the hard work that they've been doing. Frankly, some of them while they were on some vacation prior to the trial starting and had to call that short. And so I appreciate very much their professionalism and dedication. All right. That said, let's move to the business of today. I understand the state and the defense have reached a plea agreement in this case. For the record, I have a written plea agreement which indicates in sum, the defendant will plead guilty to all 5 counts in the indictment, burglary, felony, and first-degree murder, 4 counts. The state and the defendant stipulate, that is, that the defense is not free to argue for a lesser sentence at sentencing to the following. The defendant on the burglary charge will be sentenced to 10 years fixed, and that the defendant on counts 2 through 5, the 4 counts of first-degree homicide, on each count would receive a fixed life sentence, all 5 of those counts to run consecutive to one another. Defendant, as part of the plea agreement, waives his right to appeal, as well as his right to appeal the sentence and his right to seek leniency or reconsideration of the sentence under Idaho Criminal Rule 35. This is not a Rule 11 agreement, meaning the court is not bound by the plea agreement and could impose a different lawful sentence at sentencing. The stipulated agreement between the parties is the maximum on each count. So theoretically, the only thing the court could do would be a lesser sentence at sentencing. But the defendant is not free to ask the court to do so under the plea agreement. Are there any other material terms of the plea agreement that the parties would like to make? Obviously, the plea agreement, the written plea agreement will speak for itself and be part of the court record.
Not from the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, very well. All right. Ms. Taylor, have you had sufficient time to discuss this case and all of its ramifications with your client?
I have, Your Honor.
Have you discussed fully with him his rights, defenses, and possible consequences to him of the guilty plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have you been able to do all the discovery you feel necessary?
Yes, Your Honor.
And have you informed your client of the importance of providing the court truthful and accurate answers in taking this plea today?
I have.
Have you apprised your client of any and all offers and counter offers and answered his questions about those?
Yes,
Do you consent to the entry of the plea today?
I do.
All right, Mr. Kohberger, I need to ask you some questions this afternoon, or I guess it's this morning still. I do this to ensure that you so that I am assured that you understand the nature of the charges to which I understand you're going to plead guilty, as well as the possible consequences to you of your guilty pleas. I want to make sure your plea is given voluntarily, and I want to make sure that you actually committed the crimes to which you're pleading guilty, because I don't want you to plead guilty to a crime you didn't commit. If you attempt to plead guilty today, but for some reason I don't accept your plea, then it is possible that your statements today could be used against you later at trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Now, while you're standing, actually, why don't you take the oath from the clerk?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in the matter not given before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, and Mr. Kohberger, just to make it easier, you don't need to stand when you speak to me. I appreciate the sign of respect, but for convenience, you can remain seated, all right? Before I start asking you questions today, have you consumed substantive questions? Let me ask you, have you consumed any alcohol, drug, or other intoxicating substance that would impair your ability to understand or exercise reasonable judgment?
No.
You feel like you are thinking clearly today?
Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the possible penalties are for each of the crimes to which I understand you're going to offer a guilty plea today. They include on count 1, the burglary, a fine of up to $50,000 and a period of incarceration of up to 10 years in the state penitentiary. You may be required to pay restitution to any victims of the crime. Count 2, 3, 4, and 5 for first-degree murder. The consequences include a fine of up to $50,000, a period of incarceration of life imprisonment, which is a requirement of a sentence, that it be a life sentence with a mandatory minimum sentence of at least 10 years on each of those counts. In addition, you would be potentially responsible for a fine of up to $5,000 to each of the victims of your crime, to be enforced in the form of a civil judgment, to operate as additional punishment. This is in excess of any restitution or fines that the court could order. And again, you may be required to pay restitution to the victims of the crime. You would be required to provide, as to counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, a DNA sample and a right thumbprint impression, and potentially pay for analysis of those samples. You would lose any right to possess, purchase, or carry a firearm, the right to serve on jury duty, the right to hold public office, and the right to vote. Do you understand the charges and all those possible consequences?
Yes.
You've heard the plea agreement that I talked about today. Do you agree with that plea agreement?
Yes.
And do you understand the nature of the charges that you've been charged with, that I understand you're going to plead guilty today to?
Yes.
As as I indicated, I'm not bound by the plea agreement, but the plea agreement is for the maximum on each count. Do you understand that I'm not bound by the plea agreement?
Yes.
Has anyone promised you that I would be lenient or easy on you if you pled guilty?
No.
Has anyone threatened you or anyone close to you to get you to plead guilty?
No.
Is anyone other than the state's agreements with respect to the plea agreement, has anyone promised you anything in exchange for your plea agreement?
No.
Has anyone told you to be untruthful in answering my questions today?
No.
Has anyone offered you a reward of any kind other than the plea agreement in order to get you to plead guilty today?
No.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
And counsel, obviously there have been a number of motions filed to suppress evidence in this case. Other than those filed, are there any other motions that you felt were available with respect to Rule 12?
No, Your Honor.
Unseal it.
And Mr. Kohberger, you understand that by
know.
entering the guilty plea in this case, you would be giving up your right to appeal any decision this court made, as well as your sentence.
Yes. Don't let him water this down.
Have you had enough time to decide whether or not to plead guilty?
Yes.
Are you pleading guilty freely and voluntarily?
Yes.
Given your choices, do you believe it's in your best interest to plead guilty?
Yes.
Have you discussed fully the matter of pleading guilty with your attorney, and are you satisfied with the advice you've received?
Yes.
Has your attorney advised you to your satisfaction about what your rights are, what your defenses may be, and what the possible consequences to you of your guilty plea are?
Yes.
Has your attorney done everything you've asked them to do?
Yes.
Are you satisfied with their representation of you?
Yes.
I have received a written guilty plea advisory questionnaire that is purported to be filled out by you. Did you fill that document out?
Yes.
Did you understand the questions that you answered in this document?
Yes.
And are the answers that are outlined in this document your answers?
Yes.
Are those answers truthful?
Yes.
Did you sign the document?
Yes.
And this document outlines many of the rights that you have in this case. Should you not plead guilty, did you understand those rights?
Yes.
They include a right to a jury trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to the presumption of innocence. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You have the right to require the state to prove your guilt as to each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to confront your accusers and cross-examine witnesses presented by the state, including by utilizing the subpoena power of the court to accomplish that. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You understand you would have a privilege against self-incrimination and a right to remain silent, meaning you would not be compelled to testify if you did not wish to, had you not pled guilty.
Yes.
You understand you're giving up that privilege and those rights that I've just outlined by pleading guilty.
Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the state would have had to have proven at trial had you, to the crimes that you're pleading guilty to, had you, if you didn't plead guilty. Let me find the document. Hang on a second here. All right. So as to count one burglary, the state would have to have proven that on or about November 13, 2022 in Latah County, Idaho, you unlawfully entered a residence located at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho,
we go.
with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder. As to count two, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogan, from which she died. As to count three, the state would have had to have proven that on that same date in Latah County, at that same address, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. As to count four, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died.
You fucker.
And then as to count five, also murder in the first degree, that on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being, by stabbing him, from which he died. Do you understand those things the state would have had to have proven?
Yes.
And do you understand that by pleading guilty, the state no longer has to prove those things because you're admitting those things are true?
Yes. Make him say it. I love that. Yeah. Make him say it. Why are you reading it? I get it. You have to explain the charges. I want to hear it from him. No,
I
this
want to
yes,
also
no
make,
bullshit.
for the record, the defendant has provided with the guilty plea advisory form a document entitled Written Factual Basis that purports to have the defendant's signature dated 1 July 2025. Did you sign that document?
Yes.
And did you agree with the written factual basis that is
Thank you, Nan.
included there?
Yes.
Um,
Nan, we got to have a follow-up show on this. When you're feeling better, we got to have a follow-up
And
show on
then
this.
let me ask you, did you, on November 13th, 2022,
Here we go.
enter the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder?
Yes.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
Did you, on or about that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
And did you on that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
And then on or about November 13th, 2022, again in Latah County, Idaho, did you kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being?
Yes.
Did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
I would ask the state at this time to provide its recitation of its factual basis had this case gone to trial.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, the organization of the recitation is different than what I think the court and the public may be familiar with from the probable cause affidavit and other documents. The state's evidence as an overview would show that back in March of 2022, when the defendant was residing at his parents' residence or was residing back in Pennsylvania, his home state, he purchased online a K-bar knife and sheath with an
you
Amazon
go.
gift card that he had purchased shortly prior to the purchase of the knife, sheath, and sharpener. Jumping ahead, the end of June of that year, the defendant, Mr. Kohberger, moved from Pennsylvania to Pullman, Washington, which is right across the state line from Moscow, Idaho, for the purpose of pursuing a PhD in criminal justice at Washington State University. The state's evidence would indicate that beginning July 9th of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone began connecting to a cell tower that serves the area of the 1122 King Road residence in Moscow, Idaho. Now, I will acknowledge for the court and all present that there are many residences in that area. It's a dense population of mostly college-related occupants. Between July 9th of 2022 and November 7th, the defendant's phone connected to that particular tower during late night, early morning hours, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. on approximately 23 times. Now, I will acknowledge also, we do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area on those times. In the interim, on August 22nd of 2022, Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Darren Duke conducted a traffic stop in the early morning hour or late evening hours, about 11 p.m. On the west side of Moscow, on the Moscow-Pullman Road. This was the traffic stop of Mr. Kohberger's car, which turned out to be a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plates. During the course of the traffic stop, Deputy Duke was able to obtain Mr. Kohberger's name, Bryan Kohberger, his phone number, and his address, which at that point was an apartment address in Pullman. We then move to the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. The state's evidence would show that early morning hours on that day, Mr. Kohberger's phone left his Pullman residence, which is an apartment in kind of the central northwest part of Pullman. That phone was then subsequently turned off at approximately 2:54 a.m. and remained off until approximately 4:48 a.m. on Sunday, the 13th of November. The state's evidence would include at trial video surveillance of a business on the Moscow-Pullman Highway, just across the state line from Moscow. It would show a vehicle matching the description of the defendant's Hyundai Elantra entering Moscow at approximately 3:02 a.m. Compiled surveillance that the investigators put together from businesses and residents then show the defendant's car, the white Elantra, as I've described, circling the 1122 King Road area, that neighborhood, starting around 3:30 or so in the morning.
The echo is not
Comes
me.
into the
Something
immediate
wrong with the
area
split
of
feed.
1122 King Road, which is actually on a dead end, and then leaves several times. At approximately 4:05 that morning, the defense car had entered that area, was leaving, stopped at the intersection of King
This is annoying.
Road, did a U-turn, and the state's evidence would show that defendant's car came back and parked behind and above the 1122 King Road residence. The state believes that its evidence would then show
They got
that the defendant entered the residence of 1122 through the kitchen sliding door on the back side of the residence, which is the side of the residence that would
Here we
face
go.
the area above where the defendant's car was parked. Defendant entered the residence, went to the 3rd floor, and with a knife, killed Madison Mogan and Caitlin Gonzalez. The defendant, as he left that room, for whatever reason, ended up leaving, or the sheath for a K-bar knife was left on the bed next to Madison Mogan's body.
Or K-bar knife.
And I can jump ahead. That sheath was tested by the Idaho State Police Forensic Lab, and single source male DNA was found on the snap of that sheath, as well as blood from both Kaylee and Madison and other trace evidence. But it's important to note single source male DNA was on the snap of that sheath. The state's evidence would show that Xana Knodel was still awake at this time. In fact, had taken a DoorDash order not long before this started. Her room was not on the 3rd floor. It was on the 2nd floor on the west side. As the defendant was either coming down the stairs or leaving, he encountered Xana, and he ended up killing her, also with a
predicted.
large knife. Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was asleep in their bedroom, in her bedroom,
Ugh.
and the defendant killed him as well
Ugh.
with a large fixed blade knife. Each victim suffered multiple wounds. I will state for the record that there is no evidence there was any sexual component or sexual assault on any of the victims. I want to make that clear so there's no speculation. There were 2 other roommates in the house, and they were already asleep. During the course of this, one of those roommates awoke, looked out her door not knowing what was going on, and saw the defendant, who was dressed in black with a black balaclava on, holding some sort of container in his hand. And she saw him
Container?
leave the house through the direction of the kitchen where that sliding door is that I mentioned before. At approximately 4:20 that morning, so this would have been 15 minutes or so later, defendant's car is seen on a surveillance camera for 1112 King Road, which is immediately next door to the west of 1122, leaving the area at a high rate of speed. And if the court were to see that, or anybody in this courtroom would see that, you can see the car almost loses control as it makes the corner, heads north, and then turns to go south on Walenta, which is one of the only ways to get out of that part of town. The evidence would show that following that, the defendant in his Elantra drove south of Moscow. We know that he drove on the back roads because there are surveillance cameras on the main highways, Highway 95, that would have picked up the defendant's car if he'd gone that route. And they did not show the defendant's car on that route during the time. So we know that he went through a variety of back roads in very rural, isolated part of Latah County. About 4:48 that morning, defendant's phone comes back on. And the evidence will show that that phone was located south of Moscow, likely at a side road intersection with Highway 95. From there, the defendant's phone activity tracks heading back north towards Pullman, Washington, where the defendant lived. About 5:26, starting approximately 5:26, various surveillance cameras in Pullman, Washington pick up the defendant's vehicle as he enters Pullman from the south and heads north and slightly west towards his apartment, where he arrived at approximately 5:30 in the morning. Later that morning, Sunday, the 13th of November of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone returned to the area of King Road. We don't know exactly what he did, but it returned to that area. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning.
Confirmed.
He was there for about 10 minutes and then returned to his Pullman residence. About 9:30,
That's the
the
sheath.
state's evidence will show, evidence taken from the defendant's phone, that he took a selfie of
Wow.
himself on his phone
Confirmed.
in what appears to be the bathroom of his Pullman apartment with a thumbs up.
Confirmed.
The defendant's phone then went to the Lewis and Clarkson Valley, approximately 30 miles south of Moscow and Pullman. And the defendant is actually seen with his car at various businesses down there. This area is the confluence of the Clearwater River and the Snake River.
That's where the knife
Lewiston
went.
is Idaho's seaport. Large bodies of moving water down there.
Here's your knife.
In addition to tracing the defendant's activities, as I've just outlined, on the 13th and leading up to the 13th, the state's evidence will show that following Sunday, November 13th, 2022, business records show that the defendant began searching for a K-bar knife and a K-bar knife sheath.
Wow. Wow.
As the state believes, to replace the one that was left at
Wow.
the scene of the murders. The evidence also will suggest that there were at least attempts by the defendant to delete or alter his purchase history on Amazon, where all these
Wow.
transactions had occurred. Later that week, the state's evidence will show that Mr. Kohberger went to what we would call DMV, motor vehicle licensing here in Idaho, in Pullman, to change his car registration from Pennsylvania to Washington. That's of note because Pennsylvania cars do not require a front license plate. The vehicles seen on the surveillance cameras of the defendant's car showed it didn't have a front license plate on it. At the time of the traffic stop by Deputy Duke in August, it was Pennsylvania plate, no front license plate. Mr. Kohberger proceeded to finish his semester of studies at Washington State University and returned to Pennsylvania for the holidays. Law enforcement at this point were aware of Mr. Kohberger, had been accessing information about him, were trying to find him. They located him in Pennsylvania, and they conducted what's called a trash pull. During the nighttime hours, agents of the FBI, who assisted immensely with this case, working with the sanitation department back in this neighborhood in Pennsylvania, took trash that had been set out on the street for collection, sent the contents of that from the Pennsylvania residence of the defendant's parents to the Idaho State Forensic Laboratory, where the lab experts there were able to identify DNA on a Q-tip as coming from the father of the person whose DNA was found on the knife sheath that was next to Madison Logan's body in the bed. Subsequently, an arrest warrant was issued here in Idaho, and a search warrant was issued in the state of Pennsylvania with the assistance not only of the FBI, but the Pennsylvania State Police. Mr. Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home to return to Idaho. Upon his return to Idaho, a DNA sample was taken from him, and it matched the DNA found on the knife sheath next to Maddie's body at the crime scene. I can tell the court, and the public, the weapon itself, the knife, has not yet been recovered.
Damn.
I can tell the court that the defendant's apartment in Pullman was searched, as well as his office. Spartan would be a kind characterization. There was virtually nothing there. Nothing of evidentiary value was found. And of course, we are now talking 6-8 weeks after the time of the killings. In Pennsylvania, the defendant's car was seized, and it was actually pretty much disassembled internally. And it also had been cleaned. There was a bucket of cleaner right beside it. I think we can all look to our own cars, you know, in those compartments in the doors. We try to keep them clean.
This
where you put
guy was
stuff.
meticulous.
There's always some degree of crud in there. They were spotless.
Yeah,
The
meticulous.
defendant's car had been meticulously cleaned inside. And the state would present to the jury that that was part of the defendant's plan in covering up this. The defendant has studied crime. In fact, he did a detailed paper on crime scene processing when he was working on his pre-doctorate degrees, and he had that knowledge and skill. So, Your Honor, at the end, the state submits that the evidence that I've given just a quick overview of, and that to present in court would consume weeks, which the state is prepared to do and has been prepared to do, would show that as the defendant has just admitted and pleaded guilty on November 13th, 2022, Excuse me.
Ah,
Mr. Kohberger entered the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. He did that with the intent to kill. We will not represent that he intended to commit all of the murders that he did that night, but we know that that is what resulted, and that he then killed intentionally, willfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice forethought, Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Santa Cruz. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, based on the state's proffer and importantly, based upon defendant's explicit admission to committing these crimes, the court finds there is a factual basis. Therefore, with respect to count 1, burglary, felony, how do you plead, Mr. Kohberger, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 2, murder in the first degree, as it relates to the murder of Madison Mogen, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 3, as it relates to murder in the first degree for the murder of Kaylee Gonzalez, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 4, the first degree murder of Xana Kernodle, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 5, the first degree murder of Ethan Chapin, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Wow. The court will find that the defendant understands the nature of the charges and each offense and the possible consequences to him of his guilty plea. Court finds that there is a factual basis for the plea and that finds the defendant believes the plea to be in his best interest. I find that the plea was given freely, voluntarily, and was intelligently made. I accept the plea. I direct that it be entered. I'll continue the matter for sentencing in this case. I think it was mentioned on the call Monday afternoon, the defense wishes to waive a pretrial investigation. Is that accurate?
Yes, Your Honor.
Wow. The state also?
Yes, Your Honor, the state does not believe pre-sentence investigation is needed, given the evidence that is available. We want to, though, make sure that all of the victims have the opportunity to make statements to the court at sentencing.
Absolutely. And certainly both the state and the defense may present whatever sentencing memorandum and other documents you wish me to consider. The victims will be given an opportunity to provide the statements that they wish to at sentencing. Do we need more than 1 full day for sentencing?
I do not believe so, Your Honor. Obviously, we have numerous victims, and we have victims who share unique perspectives on this, and we want to make sure that they all have time to express their feelings to the court. But I believe that if we can start perhaps 8:30 or so in the morning, that we should be able to complete it all in 1 day.
Nan, you're going to have to come up and explain all this to us.
Agree with that in terms of the time frame.
To do a show when you feel better.
All right. So as it happens, we have some time reserved in this case in July and August. The week of July 22nd is available. I don't know if that's too soon for the parties or the next week, the week of August 4 is available. Any preference?
Your Honor, we're prepared as soon as the court wants to schedule it.
The state, I believe, would be prepared on the 22nd. We've told the victims' families that we're looking at approximately those dates.
All right. So because of the plan to bring in so many jurors to fill out questionnaires, I had ordered that no other trials could take place in this courthouse the week of July 22nd.
Excuse me.
And so we will use that in terms of the sentencing date because of what I'm sure will be the significant interest of the media and the public and the logistics that will be required to make that happen. Without trials going, it'll be a lot easier to do that. So let's pick that week. Why don't we pick July 23rd with the idea that if for some reason we don't finish, we could continue into the 24th. We'll start at 9 in the morning. Does that give your team enough time, Sandra? 9 in the morning? All right. Any concerns with that date?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
No, sir.
All right. Any reason why I should not rescind the non-dissemination order at this time?
Your Honor, I think that given the history of this case, it would be best if that remained in place through sentencing. So we have time to make sure there's the ability to completely answer questions. That would be the state's preference and recommendation.
We'd have no objection for the order to remain in place through
All right,
sentencing.
I will, at this point, the idea to keep it until sentencing, which time it would be.
Yeah, I know. Let us know.
Withdrawn. In order to
You're gonna
give the
hold out till
parties the
sentencing?
space and time to prepare to meet what I'm sure will be the deluge of media requests. That's at least my preliminary
think
decision
so.
at this point. We can always revisit if it seems to be, for some reason, I should. That said, obviously, I don't think the defendant, that a bond was ever set for the defendant. Were it would be revoked. The prior order allowing him to come in civilian clothes is revoked, given his plea and no longer the presumption of innocence. And in fact, now the actual conviction for the crimes. He will continue to be held at the jail pending sentencing. Is there anything else today?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
I assume that the trial date will be vacated
trial
and those
is-
4 jurors will be released.
The trial will be vacated, and I'm sure that the jury commissioner will get word to those that receive their summons that they won't be required to attend. So
Thank you.
that said, again, if you would all please wait for the parties and the victims' families and others to leave the courtroom before you do, I would appreciate it. And with that, we're adjourned.
All right, please. Oh, and thanks for cutting the feed right away, Court TV. I mean, we would have liked to see what's going on after this. You know, we like to watch people walk out and see their reactions. It's a pretty quick cut, you know, see if we're going to find something else here. So what does everybody think? I mean, we're going to keep the order in place. We're not going to let the public know. We have the confirmation on the selfie that was taken. At one point, Bill Thompson said something about knife and then knife sheath. So there was a stumble there, as he just explained afterwards, that they hadn't found the knife till this day. Bryan Kohberger won in court today. This guy is a coward. And he gaslit these families for almost close to 4 years. Gaslit these families. And knowing that they were weeks away from trial, threw the big middle finger up to these families and said, fuck you. You're not going to find out. I'm not going to let this play out in trial and describe how much of a monster I am. And you'll never know. So he took that power and control back. And I agree with Steve Gonzalez. Let me see if I can find anything of a feed of any of the families walking out, any type of. So we got Lauren Crime that's going to have live coverage soon. I wonder if any of the families are going to speak. We'll stay on here for a little bit. Nan, if you're watching, we definitely have to do a follow-up show on this. I'd love to hear your take. We have a live feed outside the courthouse. I'm going to pull that up. The AP is outside. Looks like Steve Gonzalez outside the courthouse. I'm gonna fix my screen here. camera work there. What is this camera work? Can we, like, fix the camera?
You're gonna back up.
This is the worst camera work I've ever seen. I'm getting dizzy. Jesus. I got to go back to the hearing and kind of break all this down. Again, I feel terrible for these families. Kohberger won. It's like, Tommy, we love you. What is the camera work? It's awful. I mean, God, a child with a camera could do better than this. Let me see if I can find anything else. Oh my God. I feel like I'm watching Karen Reed outside footage. All right, let's go to East Idaho news. I can't with this feed. Oh my God. I'm going to pull up East Idaho news. Matt Eaton. Here we go. See what he has to say. And his feed's terrible too. Can anybody get any feed? Can anybody get any feed correct today?
Let me
Here we go.
take you outside the courthouse.
No, please don't, because it's
May
terrible.
not have a shot here, and if we don't, I'll cut away and come back tonight. We may not have a shot here, and if we don't, I'll cut away and come back tonight. We're going to have a full courtroom insider join me tonight, 7 o'clock.
All right, I don't need to go back. Let's go back up here while we search around, see if we can see anything else. Holy smokes. Beautiful courthouse, by the way. Probably have all the modern amenities in there, unlike our courthouses here in the state of Massachusetts. Let me see if there's any other feeds. Lauren Crime is supposed to be having something here. Let's see. AP just has the feed outside the courthouse. I don't see any other feeds running. Aha, here we go. Let's see. We got someone out front, a reporter out front. Channel 4, I think it's the local news 7. Here we go.
Absolutely, shared in court. And I believe they want to hear that from Kohberger himself. That didn't happen. Now, we do know that sentencing will come up on July 23rd, and the defense team and the defendant himself will have the opportunity. He has a right to address the court, but to be clear, he is not obligated to say anything at all. And so whether or not he will have a statement prepared, that will remain to be seen, and we'll have to wait to see what happens during the sentencing hearing, July 23rd.
What's going to be especially emotional and impactful on that day, as the judge mentioned, is that every family member that wants to, who has been impacted by this case, will have a chance to speak. Now, it looks like there aren't a lot of family members coming out right now that want to share at this time. That could be because the gag order is still in place until the sentencing, which is July 23rd, as Andrea mentioned. It doesn't look like anyone's coming up to the microphones to speak, but it's going to be very powerful, very emotional. We're going to hear from probably just about everyone involved in this case. Coming up on July 23rd, they'll have time to get those victim impact statements put together. And as Andrea mentioned, Bryan Kohberger has a chance to speak as well. We'll see if he takes that opportunity or not.
again, that will
Being
be
asked to be.
July 23rd, really the next step in all this. And the point
She's not gonna
of
speak.
this hearing, as we talked about, as Andrea certainly talked about, was for the judge to make sure that Bryan Kohberger understood that this plea deal, that he was pleading guilty to these grisly murders, that this plea was being given freely, voluntarily, and without coercion. And again, he confirmed all that. The only words that he said in court today were yes, no, and guilty a number of times as he was answering the judge's questions. And Judge Hippler there decided that, yes, Kohberger understood the charges against him, what he was agreeing to. And so now he is guilty and facing those consecutive life sentences.
Yes. All right, Andrea, thank you so much for your input, for your coverage today. We have a lot more coming up throughout the day here on Channel 7. But once again, this is over. Bryan Kohberger has pleaded guilty to killing those 4 University of Idaho college students. He says he, yes, is the one who did it. We have more on our website right now, ktvb.com. You can watch what you missed on KTVB Plus.
KTVB
You
is
can
a
also,
local station
it
out
looks
there.
like we might have some people coming out that might want to speak. So I think
Let's
we're going to
stay here
continue
for a
our
minute.
coverage. Maybe it just took them a while to come on out and make that
Be right
decision.
back.
There are some people
I'll leave the
congregating
feed up.
there.
I'll be right back.
We'll wait to see if we can hear from them. As you said, as the judge said, the gag order is in place until sentencing on July 23rd. Looks like we have not seen all of the family members yet. We saw Steve Gonzalez at the front of the courtroom and then walking away from the courtroom. He was not inside at the time, had done sort of a protest by not going inside. He
Yes.
was not happy with this plea deal, though according to the judge and the prosecutor will be given an opportunity to give a statement during sentencing.
The family obviously very furious, the Gonzalez family. We did hear from Steve Gonzalez, Kaylee Gonzalez's dad, before the hearing. Let's go ahead and let you listen in on what he had to say.
Surviving victims and make this person say that they had nothing to do with it. He did it solely, he did it all on his own, and nobody else was responsible. And then we won't keep having these supporters always saying that he got set up. We know what he's planning on doing. Somebody died, a vet died, and he's going to try to say that, put the blame on that person. So he's not going to take accountability.
All right, so there's that soundbite there. He was not in the courtroom for the plea agreement. He did join his wife, Christy Gonzalez, afterward there on the steps of the courthouse, and then they left, and with no comment, as far as we know. He could have spoken to some photographers on the way out. We're not quite sure yet, but we are waiting. There's a little stand there with a bunch of microphones from different networks and organizations here of the media who would like to hear from some people involved in the case. If they so choose, we'll see if they do come out.
Now, again, let's go back to this plea deal and what was agreed to, what Bryan Kohberger pled guilty to today. Again, 5 counts, 10 years fixed for burglary, but also consecutive, not concurrent, those would be served at the same time, consecutive life sentences, 4 life sentences each for first-degree murder. He cannot appeal, cannot ask for a different sentence as well. And lawyers said that they gave Kohberger all the information he needed to agree to this plea deal. Again, we heard from him numerous times during that hearing that he understood it, that he agreed to it. While he did not show emotion, Judge Hippler believed that he absolutely understands what he is agreeing to and the seriousness of this sentence and these crimes.
The judge asked him over and over again.
Yeah.
Over and over again, gave him the opportunity to say he did not commit these crimes, that he does not want to take this plea deal. He did not do that. I do want to mention as well, there was a lot of talk about why this hearing happened so quickly. Many family members were concerned. They didn't have enough time to get to Boise to be here for this hearing.
Real quick, I'm just going to talk a little bit here. You know, the thing that is just I'm very angry about all of this is that the way that Bill Thompson and his team handled this, you know, he really left these families in the dark, I mean, Steve Gonzalez, Christy Gonzalez constantly complained about that. We're not getting any information. They're not telling me any information. They're not sharing any type of information with us, you know, and to hear the emotion at the end, Bill Thompson getting emotional at the end, you know, reading off, you know, what Bryan Kohberger did in murdering these 4 Idaho students. hearing that emotion come out of him, it's like you didn't handle this well, and you are essentially giving this guy a way out. You've given him a way out now, and that is a big, massive impact on that community out there. I mean, this affected so many people. This affected the state of Idaho. And the effects of this, the ripple effects of this is going to be felt for years down the road. They really bumbled this at the end. This should have been pushed to a trial. It should have all came out in trial, and like Steve Gonzalez was saying, let a jury of his peers, let people in the community decide the fate of Bryan Kohberger. And they bumbled this bad. All right, let's go back to the news feed here. KTVB 7 is local out there, out in front of the Idaho County Courthouse.
It's called a non-binding agreement. So think of it legally as such kind of a suggestion, knowing that both prosecutors and defense attorneys are presenting to the court that they have come to this together, that they both agree that this is what should happen and they are expecting to happen at that sentencing. He did make it clear that they cannot argue against this sentence, meaning that they cannot argue in favor of a lower sentence. So we would expect him to issue those life sentences, again, consecutive. That means one after the other. So these are not concurrent. The judge would have the choice to do that, concurrent or consecutive. He said those will be consecutive. But what the judge will also be able to do is talk about restitution, money that would be expected to be paid by Kohberger. Both, there will be two options. There will be restitution to victims, but there's also a civil claim. So he said that up to $5,000 per family that would be paid in civil damages.
Big deal.
By the defendant to those families. So those are some of the specifics that have not yet been decided that we would expect to see handed down during that sentencing hearing in just a few weeks. And so as you talked about that scheduling and giving the opportunity for those families to get here, he wants to make sure that everyone that is impacted directly by this crime, by law, they have the right to address the court and to be in the courtroom and to address the defendant directly. So today, the Gonzalez family, Steve Gonzalez, Kaylee's father, deciding not to go into the courtroom. So we'll see if he's here and what that statement will be, of course, during that sentencing hearing. We expect it to last much of the day. They talked about probably not needing more than a day, but we would expect to see lots of testimony. And then the defense also has the opportunity to address the court. In a lot of cases, the defense does not issue any kind of argument, don't present anything during that sentencing phase, and the defendant himself may or may not speak. It is very common practice for the defendant not to say anything during the sentencing hearing. Also important to note that this will be the opportunity for people to hear for the first time because of that gag order. This will be the first time that we will hear from a lot of these families, from their own words as they sit on that witness stand and share their testimony.
So there is an upcoming press conference that's going to happen with some of the families. I do see some camera activity and a podium being set up. So whether the family will speak, I don't know. Maybe the prosecuting team of Bill Thompson will speak. Let's go back to this feed and see what plays out. Here we go.
Or they'll send us a statement. So who does this impact?
He talked about the non-dissemination order, which would mean that the records will stay sealed. So that means that when we put in public information requests, media often, we have a right to know, the public has a right to know and as a right to documents, unless they are sealed by the court. Those are only temporary seals, meaning that they believe that it is too much of a risk to allow those documents to be disseminated, to be shared publicly because of the impact that they may have on a potential trial. Given that this is such a high-profile case, they are going to wait until after sentencing. The judge saying today that he is going to hold that dissemination order in place until after that sentencing hearing. And that point, we should be able to get all of the documents related to this case that are a matter of public record. And so the Judge Hippler, saying that today that he expected those requests to be voluminous. He knows that a lot of people will be putting in requests for all of that information. Now, in terms of what people can share, so non-dissemination means you can't share information directly related to the case. That doesn't mean you can't have your own opinions and you can't have reactions to things. That is not what the law protects. And so in this case, it means they can't share evidence, they can't share documents, they can't share video related to the case, but they would be able to speak about their opinion. Now, whether or not they feel comfortable doing that, that's up to them. That's up to their own discretion.
Andrea, thank you for that clarification. So we are staying live right now in case there are some families who come out of the courtroom and want to share their opinions. Again, not evidence, anything like that, but just opinions, reaction to what they heard and what they saw today in court. We'll stick around for chance that might happen again. Steve Gonsalves has already walked away from the courtroom. He will not be sharing any more this morning.
We will see, though, if he'll provide a victim impact statement where he could speak directly to Bryan Kohberger. That may be something that he wants to do. So we'll see if he does that on sentencing day,
Well, I'm
July
sure he
23rd.
will.
We do want to get to this because Abby Wilt has been in Moscow for the last few days talking to people there in the community, getting their opinions about
Great
how they
coverage,
feel about
KTV.
the plea deal. Right now, she's live right outside where the King Road house used to stand. It was torn down in December of 2023. Abby, show us the scene there. I know there are still teddy bears and flowers and letters left for the victims there.
Until at least the impact statements release it. Just
Maggie,
let us
Justin,
know.
it's clear here that people are still really in grief. You can see behind me where that house sat. It was 1122 King Road. And you can see there those teddy bears, flowers, just a lot of signs of people still here healing here at King Road. And like you said, there was a house here that is where those murders happened. Again, that has been demolished since. And I've been talking with a lot of people here in Moscow the last couple of days, just asking them how they feel about this plea deal, if they wanted it to go to trial, if they wanted to see Kohberger face the death penalty. And again, like you said, people have very mixed reactions. I think it's very clear people here just want healing. They're tired of their town being in the spotlight. They're tired of having so much attention on them time after time again. And a lot of them said that they do just want closure. We've been trying to talk to some of the neighbors around here. That house right beside me, you can see that one was the one that had the surveillance footage of Kohberger's car leaving that was revealed a couple of months ago. Like I said, people just are very willing to see closure come to this case. They're ready to have closure. And a lot of these neighbors, I want to point out too, might not be the same tenants. This is a college town. We're right next to the University of Idaho. All of these homes are mostly college students. So the people that did live here when those murders happened, again, might not be living here now, but just the town in general, the sense of the town in general is they want closure. They want to have healing. Whether that came in the form of this plea deal or that came in the form of the trial through the death penalty, it's very clear that healing is kind of what's on everyone's mind as well as justice. And like you said, that gag order has not been lifted. We thought that maybe it was going to be lifted today. It will not be lifted. So some of those people here in Moscow that haven't been able to speak up yet still will not be able to talk today, but we're going to be trying to gather more reaction today from city leaders, from University of Idaho leaders, and just from the community in general on what this means to them.
And Abby, we know you did talk to several people out there in the community. We shared some of that this morning.
Yeah, let's hear what they had to say actually right now.
I believe scriptural mandates are that when you take a life, you lose a life. And I think if anything less than that, I'm not real satisfied.
In my opinion, if you get life in prison, it is the same as the death penalty. I know it doesn't give people that same sense of justice knowing that they were taken off the earth. But to me, if they have to spend every waking hour in prison instead of being out in this world, that's the death penalty either way.
It would have been cathartic to see him dragged into court and to have all the evidence of the case scrutinized again.
I think it'll be really good for this whole trial to wrap up. I feel like every time there's an update in the trial, this town gets more it reminds them back to when it happened. So I feel like it gets more and more stressful for the community.
It also would have continued to keep the spotlight on a community that maybe doesn't want the spotlight on them anymore. Maybe it's time for there to be true healing, to know that there's been resolution.
No, I think life in prison is better than the death penalty. I think that kind of gives you an out. You don't have to suffer as much, not really suffering, but I think he deserves to rot in prison.
Well, I think we'll appreciate the closure, but justice is part of that. And if we don't have justice, I'm not sure that's closure. And he took 4 lives, innocent lives. I think he should pay with his.
Yep.
So none of us
Maggie,
can really.
Justin, that was a mix of University of Idaho students. That That was a mix of Moscow leaders. Sorry, I think I cut you off there, but that was really just a mix of a lot of people here in Moscow, of leaders, of students, of people that were here during the time of the murders, of people who came to University of Idaho after those murders happened. So it
I
really is
agree.
just a general sentiment of people are confused and they want healing here.
Want healing, want to start to move on. We're hoping potentially the families can get that as well. But we've already heard from some family members who say this is not that justice they were looking for. And so that healing not necessarily beginning for them.
That's true. All right. Thank you so much, Abby. We appreciate you joining us there live from Moscow. We do want to mention we've spoken a lot about the Gonzalez family and how they feel about this. They are furious. They wanted the death penalty. They wanted a trial. That is what they were focused on, and that did not happen for them today. We also learned they had some conditions. So if there was going to be a plea agreement, they said, you know what? We want some conditions to come along with that. That was requiring a full confession, full accountability, location of the murder weapon, confirmation that he acted alone, and the true facts of what happened that night. That did not happen either. That's not to say Bryan Kohberger may not decide to speak at the hearing and share more about the case. Today, he just said yes, no, and guilty. But he made it clear, the judge made it clear, he made it clear that he is the person responsible for these murders.
We had also heard from the Mogan and Chapin families who said they were in favor of this plea deal. Again, they believed that this would help them start that healing process, potentially move on. Again, appeals off the table, anything like that, potentially just more courtroom appearances for them, having to see Kohberger again and again.
All right, I'm going to bounce over to Law and Crime Network. Anjanette Levy is on talking right now. So let's check out Anjanette Levy. Here we go.
Want to plead guilty, please take the death penalty off the table and the state agreeing to it.
Looks like she's outside the courthouse.
Yeah, you and I on the air, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, I predicted this is likely to happen. We heard more of the evidence today. It's a circumstantial case, but a very strong circumstance.
All right, let me do this. I'm going to bring in a special guest that's going to jump on us really quick and give his opinion. I got Adam Tieper Legal jumping in. Adam, how's it going today? What do you think? What do you think here? What are your thoughts on all of this?
You know, I think between my own, personal law firm, and I'm literally sitting here drafting nonsense, and then compounding that with the news of Diddy's verdict this morning and now this, I am feeling lost right now. Honestly, this is one of those circumstances that my professional opinion and my personal opinion are at severe odds with each other. Obviously, I am a defense attorney, not going to pretend that my clients are always innocent.
No.
And this is an absolute win for the defense. They obviously played the game. His defense attorneys, Ann Taylor did a remarkable job, and they got exactly what they wanted. But on the other side of that, there's enough evidence, both actual and circumstantial here, that I personally feel like Bryan is absolutely guilty. And with that feeling comes the fact that this plea agreement is a slap in the face to the families. It's a slap in the face to the victims. And now, after listening to what was just said and facts coming out in ways that we haven't heard before, it makes it that much worse. And now I'm, obviously, as attorneys, we have things that we know that we can't release to the public on all the time. But it bothers me that certain things were said by the prosecution just now that are much different than what was, being released to us as the general public. And you got to question the sanctity of everything that's been going on. But this is absolutely mind-blowing and absolutely unfair to the families. And, if you take into consideration what Steve's been saying the last few days on the news media, you wonder if the families knew things that we didn't as the public, which is why he's even more outraged. And it gives you a bigger sense of feeling of anger and frustration over this.
I'm going to push back against you a little bit here. And I don't normally do that, but I honestly, and I think I'm going to go along with this chat. I could care less about Ann Taylor. I really could. I think, listen, I understand you're a defense attorney. Okay. I'm not an attorney. I'm just a guy with some eyes that look into these cases. I think she played a lot of shenanigans in this. I mean, she was bringing up laws from like 1775. It was almost ridiculous. And like, I understand that's your client. You're supposed to defend them in the best way possible. Okay. But this like delay, and it just, the shenanigans with the DNA evidence. Listen, I think as a general public, someone of the general public looking at this and saying, look, there's a compounding, overwhelming amount of evidence against this guy. I mean, I started to sleuth into this, within 3 to 6 months of really looking in. I think we had some really big details on what this guy did. And it's funny now hearing a little bit more today, Bill Thompson releasing this, this information, adding a little bit to kind of the mystique around this case. It kind of confirmed a lot of things that I had suspected, almost 2 years ago when I did multiple live streams and deep diving into this case. Wow. I just think that Kohberger got the very easy way out in this. And I think that
I agree.
This really should have been put out into the public. This is a very, very high profile murder case. For this to even be on the table and thought about, I think was a very cowardly way for the prosecution to move this along. Let's get Bill Thompson his retirement. He's out of here. He doesn't want to face, what was the schedule for almost 3-4 month trial. He probably didn't want to sit through the rigors of a trial. Ann Taylor got what she wanted. Bryan Kohberger got what he wanted. And in the end, these families still continue to suffer. And the thing that sucks about it, Adam, is we may never know, and you know this, we may never know all of the true details of what happened. I think we got a little bit more today, but not enough. We want to know why. Why was it these specific kids or this specific person that he picked out? And we found out that 2 of them were essentially collateral damage today. So was it a focus on Kaylee? Was it a focus on Maddie? Which one of them was he focusing on? And obviously, as I suspected, and I did a live stream about this, and you can look it up on my channel, it's called The Encounter, where we suspected that Xana and Ethan were collateral damage. Now that we found out Ethan actually was asleep, I had always thought that he woke up, maybe had heard what was going on with Xana, came in to try to save her, and ultimately became collateral damage. But it's sickening. I'm upset. I think that the University of Idaho, Scott Green, the president at that time, stuck his nose in a lot of things in places that he shouldn't have been, and made this, about the school and not about the families. Took possession of that home, demolished it. I was upset at that. The fact, and I'm going off here, Adam. I'm sorry. I'm going off.
First of all, that the demolishing of the home, I thought was, I don't know why even the prosecution allowed it, or, if they're going to present a claim, maybe, they wanted to hide something. You never know, because I don't trust state governments anymore. But I fully agree with you. I think the demolishing of the home before the trial was over was completely wrong. I do want to caveat something you said, though.
Sure.
First of all, yes, the delaying of the trial, the pushing it back, she wanted to get rid of the death penalty. So those were, I can't say that I haven't played tactics. So I would love to agree with you that that's messed up, but I'd be calling the kettle and pot and the whole shenanigans.
Wow.
I've done the same thing.
Yeah.
However, you'd be surprised what kind of precedent in cases are 50, 100, 200 years old. And so I can't disagree. I have to disagree on that aspect of it, saying that it's shenanigans that she's citing cases from like 1700s. I haven't done it with cases that old in the criminal world. That seems astronomical to me. But like in the civil world, there's one case that the precedent from 1891 is still the precedent, and I've cited it in multiple cases in memorandums of law now. So it, to me, with the knowledge of like what I do with my own practice, it's
Yeah.
not that far off to fathom that you're using case law from 100 years ago to make your argument. I mean, if we want to sidestep for a minute, my favorite thing in the world to laugh about is the fact that trial by combat is not actually disallowed in America. Our codified laws are based on English common law, and the English common laws that we didn't agree with, we codified and we changed.
Yeah.
But there are certain laws that were never disallowed. Like one of them is trial by combat, and like I'm pretty sure it was a divorce attorney in New York a couple years ago tried to invoke trial by combat. So there's a lot of wackiness. And you and I have talked, and I said the word of the week a couple weeks ago for me was wackadoodle. Everything in
Yeah.
court is wackadoodle. There's a lot of sketchy, crazy things that go on in the courtroom, and sometimes you got to bend things and make the arguments work for you. I mean, from a professional standpoint, you know, Bryan's attorneys did exactly what they needed to do to control the narrative and get the outcome that they wanted, but from a personal standpoint, that outcome is wrong, just all wrong on multiple levels.
Why do you think that the prosecution, I'm trying to get my hands around this. Like, you're not working with the families. You're not giving them all of the information, what's going on. Obviously, Steve and Christy have been very vocal about that through this whole 3-year process. Okay. I mean, they've been on monthly on News Nation talking about this, and went, you know, in speaking with Ashley Banfield at multiple times and saying, have you getting any updates? And they're not really. Why at the last minute, kind of this witching hour before we're getting set for trial, would this deal just magically pop? Like, I'm just trying to figure this out. And then you're kind of skirting the families out of it and just saying, nope, this is the direction we're going in, and you're just going to have to deal with it. I don't understand that. I don't get it. That's what we want to find out now. What pushed the prosecution and the defense to make this deal, skirt out the families, and just say, no, this is in the best interest of the public. Let's just go forward with this, put them life behind bars and move on. I don't get it, Adam. I don't get it.
If I'm being perfectly honest, I don't necessarily get it either. Especially if they think that the evidence they had is that strong. I mean, I've had my cases settle out like 2 days before trial. I've had cases where I'm in court the morning of trial, and the other side's pulled me over and was like, hey, we'll offer a deal, blah blah blah, and we tell the court to second call it, and we'll start trial late. We've come to trials settlements. But at the same time, you know, I still think that a lot of it's circumstantial. I do think that they're going to have issues with potential. Yes, Nan is correct. Jury's very unpredictable and terrifying. You have the thoughts of a mistrial. You have thoughts that maybe
Of course.
your way. So I can only assume that with all the potential issues that the Commonwealth would have, not the Commonwealth, Idaho, would have on their, my brain's still.
We're still Karen Reed here in the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah, I also I mass, so to me it's always the Commonwealth problems for me on a daily basis. It's the prosecution for Idaho could be looking at the credibility of their witnesses. They could be looking at the evidence. They could be looking at look at they want to bring witnesses in from Pennsylvania, and even though they were court ordered to appear, they've been very outspoken about not wanting to travel. So that could play a role too, because if they don't travel out to Idaho, then you're going to have to postpone that witness testimony, and you're going to have Pennsylvania authorities go pick them up on a warrant for failing to appear, and then that could get ugly too. So there's a lot of things that I think if the defense came forward and said, listen, just take the death penalty off the table and we'll plead guilty and Bryan will serve life in jail. That's, I mean, yes, they were seeking the death penalty, but ultimately that's the punishment they were seeking. They were seeking him to never be allowed in public again. So I think for them weighing everything, it was an easy out.
Yeah.
And that way they wouldn't have to worry about witnesses not showing up. They wouldn't have to worry about putting people through trauma and stress. And, you know, obviously you have 4 families here, and all 4 families essentially feel different from each other. There have been that are very outspoken, but then there are families that we don't hear from that have been very quiet, and we don't know what they feel. So I think that this was, even though I personally think it's a cop-out, this was probably the best option they had, weighing all the options to say, hey, listen, he's in jail for life. Now we don't have to worry about any potential issues. We don't have to worry about the jury. And guess what? Now we've also saved a ton of time and money.
Yeah, I mean, we just even heard today in court, Hippler said we were getting ready to bring in 10,000 people from our community to sit as potential jurors on this case. 10,000. And I don't know what their rules are out there. What is it? Massachusetts, they take, what is it, 17 and then it cuts down to 12? Was that what it was in Karen Reed, or 18 down to 12?
Aaron was 18.
18.
I know certain other states, they go as high as 24 potential alternates. But I mean, yeah. And then like with the jury pool too, Idaho is not exactly a very dense populated state. So what's the word I want to use? The odds of people not knowing this case, if you live in Idaho, is probably very slim to none. That's, even though it's a big state, it's still smaller town mentalities. So when someone battles your community, no matter what county you're in, you're still going to find out about it. So you just never know. And yes, like Nan said, juries are really unpredictable. I mean, I've had cases where I have had the strongest evidence in the world, and I've still had a jury rule opposite my client's favor, and I just sit there dumbfounded. So you don't know. You just never know. So
and that's something that I talked about at the very beginning of the show, you know, just giving that alternate theory in this too. This goes to trial. It just takes one. Adam, you know that. It only takes one, and they cement their foot and they go, nope, Bryan Kohberger didn't do this. And you have a mistrial. And then it could go to another trial. I mean, look at what just happened in Karen Reed's case. Mistrial, another second trial. The jury got it 100% right. And, you know, we've now free and clear of that. But this could have gone on 3, 4, 5 times. But I'm going to tell you right now, Steve Gonsalves, you know, especially the Gonsalves family, they didn't care. They were in for the long ride. They wanted to see this out. But it would have just been even more heartbreaking, I think, in my opinion. This is what's so weird about it. Like, I'm pissed off. But then I start thinking, like, well, what if this would have went through 2 mistrials? We get to a 3rd trial. The jury acquits Bryan Kohberger with all this, you know, evidence that's so compounding against him. And they walk and they go, oh, my God, my heart is so broken for all these families. They didn't get justice. So, I mean, it's a weird line we're walking here today. Let me just get to this really quick. Lady Law Sandra had been a huge member of my channel for a very long time, supporter. She said $5 super chat. She said, first time hearing from you, great insight. And she's talking to you about you, Adam. She said, why would the prosecution even consider a plea deal in a high profile death penalty case like Kohberger's? And I think he actually just explained that, you know, coming from a defense attorney and an attorney, you know, saves time, saves money, saves the community. Again, I'm really irked about this, and I hope more comes out over the next couple of weeks. I think we still have a lot of content to talk about here and a lot of subjects to talk about here. And just finding out, like, really what was Bill Thompson and the prosecution's theory in all this, to just say, okay, well, let's just take it. We'll move on. He's confessed. It's the mystery. It's the mystery question now.
Yeah, I think that's the, you know, obviously, and I say this as a defense attorney that I think he's guilty, which, you know, professionally I shouldn't be. But you have to remember that even though this is a win for the defense, taking the death penalty off the table, this is still an absolute win for the prosecution. So yes.
Okay, we have a press conference. We have a press conference. Hang on.
Good
Sorry, Adam.
afternoon.
We have a press conference.
I'm Leander James from the law firm of James, Vernon and Weeks in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I'm a victims' rights attorney. For the past 2 years, I've had the privilege and the honor to provide pro bono representation in this criminal case for Karen Laramie and Scott Laramie, the loving mother and stepfather of Maddie Mogan. I will be reading a statement of gratitude today from the Laramies. 962 days ago, we lost our Maddie, our kind, loving, vivacious, and caring daughter full of purpose and promise. We are grateful for the gift of her life, and we have grieved the loss of that life during each of these 962 days. We love you, Maddie, and we miss you. We are grateful for the gift of the young, vivacious, promising lives of Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan, and we deeply, deeply mourn their senseless loss. We remain in solidarity with their families and friends, and we continue to shower them with our prayers and support. We are grateful for their prayers, love, and support that they have given us. They have helped us and sustained us during our darkest times. We are grateful to the prosecutor, Bill Thompson, and his dedicated and caring team, including victim coordinators, Kim and Stacy, who have helped to guide us through the sometimes confusing and disorienting legal process. Thank you for all your dedicated, diligent, and tireless commitment to justice and the successful outcome reached today. We support the plea agreement 100%.
Wow.
While we know there are some who do not support it, we ask that they respect our belief that this is the best outcome possible for the victims, their families, and the hope. We extend our deep gratitude to the many law enforcement officers and staff who worked tirelessly to obtain the critical evidence that brought justice today, including the Moscow Police Department, the FBI, the Idaho State Patrol, and the Lehigh County Sheriff's Department. We are deeply grateful to Judge Hippler and Judge John Judge before him. We thank you for your diligence, thoughtfulness, and judicial guidance. We appreciate the difficult work you have done to balance the rights of all involved and to uphold the rule of law. You have had our prayers and support throughout this case. We send our love and gratitude to the many family and friends who have supported us, cared for us, and helped us to heal our open emotional wounds. To the good people of North Idaho, who have showered us with kindness and support, we thank you. We also mourn today with you the recent tragic and senseless loss of two brave North Idaho firefighters. We extend our prayers and support to their families. You are not alone. We understand your pain. For all parents who have endured the loss of a child, we know recovery is a long and at times an almost unbearable journey. But you are not alone. And there is hope and there is healing. We thank those in the press who have respected our privacy and the grieving process and the privacy and grieving process of families of Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. To others in the press, we gently encourage you to do the same. We thank the many people across our nation and beyond who have reached out to us, prayed for us, and extended their kindness. You too have helped us on our journey to heal. We now embark on a new path. We turn from tragedy and mourning. We turn from darkness and uncertainty of the legal process to the light of the future. We have closure. We embark on a path of hope and healing. We invite all of those who have mourned with us to join us, and we wish you well. Thank you. I will now share a few words of my own. Over the past 2 years, I've been amazed and humbled by Karen and Scott's strength, endurance, and faith. They have uplifted me and so many. They founded a nonprofit to help others in the name of Maddie. They have been a beacon of hope amidst a dark and tragic time. To those young and bright attorneys out there looking for purpose and meaning in your profession, I invite you to join the effort of crime victim attorneys to bring victims justice with compassion, empathy, humility, and understanding. This case is not the end of violence. This case is not the end of lawlessness. We need your help to bring hope and healing to the innocent caught in the crossfire of life. Thank you all. Leander James, Leander, last name is James. Thank you.
There was a victim advocate.
Yeah.
representative.
So based on the statement he read from the family, and I knew they had started a nonprofit. Based on the statement he read from the family and his message from himself, I'm
Oh, what happened to Adam? I lose you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, we lost him again. I think you're on mute, buddy. Let's see. Can you hear me? You know what you do? Just bounce out of the room and come back, Adam. Close out and come back. Then we're gonna do a quick wrap up here in a minute. If you want to get a final word in, he's gonna come back in. So yeah, we heard a statement from Maddie's victim advocate. We'll roll out a little bit longer. Have Adam come back and give us a final word, and then we're gonna close up shop. There'll be much to talk about here over the next couple of weeks. You know, I'll keep my eyes on this. I'm sure the Gonzalez family is going to fire back. Oh, it's going to get really ugly amongst the families, I think. And it's really not the time. But I know the Gonzalez family is not happy at all. What do y'all think? What do you all think? Yeah, I was going to try to get out there too, Travis, but it didn't play out that way, unfortunately. Well, you know, fortunately, unfortunately, I mean, I don't know. I mean, how do we look at this? I wanted a trial to happen. I wanted to see all of the evidence. I wanted to see what was going on, you know, amongst things that we could not see in here and things that were not put out there. But I'm hoping that these documents will be unsealed. I'm sure that people will talk. I'm sure that people will speak. And I hope we get more information than what we've been hearing, you know, over the last 3 years. So, I think I'm going to wrap this one up. I'll be doing some follow-up shows as more conversations happen with the victims' families and witnesses. I think there's still a lot more conversations to take place. So I'll get Adam up here for final word, and then we're going to wrap this one up. You figure it out?
Sorry, I have a million screens open right now. I'm in the middle of a federal complaint, so I have evidence and it's all wonky. I apologize.
No, it's all
Final
right.
words.
Yeah.
I was saying how based on the statement that he just gave, I'm going to assume that some of the families were maybe not necessarily wanting to relive all that. And the prosecution made that call that this is what's best, that they can get the justice they want. He's never going to be freed. He's going to be in jail without having to put the families through immense amount of pain, because if they had as much as they say they had, with what was just read, I
Right.
think that there's probably a lot of details that if you're going to drop that on the families, it's going to be very, very, very painful.
Yeah.
You just had somebody, I forget who it was, ask about unsealing.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't see most of this case ever being unsealed.
People are
I
going to
think
talk though,
we
Adam.
might
People
get
will talk.
snippets. Yeah, people will talk, but I don't foresee like these evidence exhibits getting unsealed the way people are hoping they will.
Yeah. It's crazy. I'm going to keep an eye on this, of course, as we move on to, other cases that we can talk about. Obviously, I have my 617 show on Sunday mornings, keeping up with all the local stuff here in Massachusetts. But I still think there's deeper and bigger conversations that we could have in all this now that this is all unfolded. And, give it a couple of days. I'm sure that the families are going to come out and speak a little bit more. I know Steve's going to be pissed. I'm sure he'll be on News Nation with Ashley Banfield tonight and talking. So we'll have to see. And then you have sentencing. They said what on was it the 30th or the 22nd? I think it was the 22nd. So we'll see sentencing. Obviously, I'll cover that. We're going to hear about if the victims' families do decide to speak, which I'm sure most of them will. And we'll cover those victim impact statements. So I want to go back over actually the hearing offline and kind of make some notes and talk about it. Talk about some of the 23rd. I'm sorry. And here, just listen about some of the details that we had heard. And I had done some speculation, which after the crime, some of my kind of intuition and sleuthing kind of lined up. And what we found out again is that after the murders, that same next day, he went to try to find another K-bar knife to replace the one that was either lost or dumped. And it's just a lot to sort through. So, Adam, listen, I want to thank you for jumping up with me and popping up and giving us your opinion. I think we have still a lot of stuff that we can dive into this. And again, we'll have to see what unfolds over the next couple of days to weeks. And then we're going to get to sentencing and go from there.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for jumping up. Good luck on your case. Good luck on your paperwork today. Thanks for jumping up and giving us your
Need to come
opinion.
see your studio.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make it happen. We'll plan a day here. You're frozen. You're frozen. But we'll talk soon. All right, everybody. I'm gonna cover this one. I'm gonna wrap this one up. I want to thank Adam Tieper for jumping up, Tieper Legal, for giving us a quick opinion about what happened today inside the court. Listen, Bryan Kohberger pled guilty, 4 counts of murder, 1 count of burglary, and wow. I will keep my eyes on this for all the unfolding details, and we're going to keep continuing to break this down over the next couple of weeks. I think, there's still a story here, and we'll have to see what the after effects of this is. So I want to thank everybody for jumping in with me today on this live show. I appreciate you supporting the channel, supporting myself, and I will talk to everybody soon. I'm going to be back on Sunday with the 617, and we're going to talk about the 2 attorneys that have spoken the most in the Karen Reed, post Karen Reed, David Yannetti and Robert Alessi, and some other local cases that are going on here. So I'll see you back unless something breaks here in the next couple of days. But I'm going to be actually probably taking some time away from the channel for a couple of days to get a mental health break. There's some places that I want to go, some people I want to see, and go from there. But I'll be in touch soon with everybody. I hope everybody has an amazing rest of their, what are we on? We're at Wednesday, right? Rest of their Wednesday, and talk to everybody soon. Have a great day. I'm going to head out. Peace.